Hi, I'm James at Bespoke Airsoft and welcome back to another episode of Bringing It Home. And in this episode we're talking about the WE Glock 17 Gen 5. So the first thing you might be thinking is, do we need another Glock 17 on the market from the likes of WE? But well, don't go away. There's a few little differences on this thing that perhaps may sway you picking this one over the old versions. So the Gen 5 is supposed to mimic the real Gen 5 in terms of aesthetics and functionality and appearance. There's a few little upgraded revisions here and there. The first one to come to mind when looking at it is the sort of the chamfered front end, easy to put in holsters. It gives it a bit more of a sleeker look and not so boxy. I'll do a quick overview of the rest of the bits and pieces, then I'm going to get another camera in so you can see these a little bit more clearly. But this is going to be more ambidextrous friendly. So you've got an ambidextrous slide release, you've got a magazine release that you can switch from left to right hand side depending whether you're a left or a right handed shooter. The takedown levers here that you pull down to remove the slide are the same as before. It's a very reminiscent of a Gen 4 style frame. The only difference is being that you can switch the magazine release over. You've got a cutout at the front of the magazine here, and you've got a flared magwell, as well as having a new bumper style to the bottom of the magazine. The W Glock Gen 5 magazines will have the magazine cutout section on either side. This is actually a sample that we had before we had these in stock, so it's the one that we've got here. It didn't have a Gen 5 magazine, but that's the difference between the other generations of those gas magazines. Same on the 19 as well. So we'll delve into this a little bit closer. We'll get the overhead camera in because it's going to be easier to see these bits and pieces as I tell you about them. But as a quick overview, looking at this thing, it feels like a Gen 4. You know, it doesn't look like a Gen 4 because you've got the flared magwell, you've got the chamfered front on the slide there. Ambidextrous slide releases, they've been around for some time now. They was available on some of the models, not all of them. What would have been nice to see on the Gen 5s is their extended slide release on both sides, where they had that little notch which made it a little bit easier to operate with gloves on. But from the most part, I can tell you it is a Gen 4 lower with a few iterations here and there. Don't get me wrong, the flare magwell is nice, but it's not going to make you be able to insert the magazine at super fast speeds. If anything, it more helps with putting the magazine in at a slight angle. So it's not like you can put it in far to the left or the right and it's going to slide in like, you know, some race pistols or something like that. But if you are sort of on target and your magazine's more canted to the left or to the right like that, it does make sort of finding the magazine well a little bit easier. But you can buy those as aftermarket upgrade parts for the Gen 4s, Gen 3s and such forth. You'll still find the useless safety lever on the front here. This is a bit of a pain in the backside, especially if you put it on accidentally and you're in a game and then you go to fire it and it's not working. So always before you go into a game, make sure that's clicked off because you don't want that to happen. Same style trigger with the sort of middle section here, which stops you from pulling the trigger unless your finger is on the center of the trigger like that. Same sort of reset and pull compared to the other WE Glocks. Like I said, mostly this is just a revised version. So if you've got Gen 3s, Gen 4s, Glock 17s, and you're thinking about replacing them all with the Gen 5, obviously if you want the flared magwell, if you want the chamfered slide, that's a great plus. If you want the ambidextrous capabilities, perfect as well. But there's nothing wrong with your Gen 3 and Gen 4 Glocks compared to this one. Like I said, slide comes off the exact same way. As you see here, nice and easy. And looking at the internals here, we can see some similarities from the previous models. So we'll go away, we're back in just a second, and we'll get this under the overhead camera and we'll show you more in depth on what I'm talking about. So the WE Glock 17 Gen 5 from WE, their latest iteration. They're doing this with the 17s and the 19s, and to be honest, although it's not like an absolute ridiculous new thing that's going to change the industry, it is nice that they've covered these little bits and pieces to bring you perhaps a revised version of their 17 and 19 lineup. And the reasons why you'd be choosing these over the standard Gen 3s or Gen 4s, I mean, Gen 3s sort of speaks for itself. If you want sort of the original Glock 17 with the smaller magazine release and the different style frame, then that's probably the one that you're going to choose. I think it's more in terms of the Gen 4 and the Gen 5 is where you're going to pick one or the other. Frame wise is in style and everything else, they're very much similar. The magazine release is very much the same size, the triggers are the same, everything, all the controls are in the same places that you would expect them. Like I said, you've got a flared magwell on the Gen 5, which puts it as, in my opinion, it puts it in front of the Gen 4 because it's an added feature. You've also got a quiet section on the front here for when you're pulling your magazines out, if you've ever got like dirt or dust or anything like that in between your magazine and your frame. It's obviously going to be a little bit more difficult to pull out. We've all been there. We've been in the mill some events where you've pulled this out, you've shoved it in, it's got a bit of grit, and then you're sort of hitting your mag release, it's not coming out. It just gives you that purchase on the bottom of the magazine like that, just to pull it out. It's a feature seen on many aftermarket pistols and pistols that we've done as well in the past, where we've like literally cut sections out of the frame like that, and it just makes pulling the magazine out a lot easier if it does get stuck. So another plus on this over the Gen 4 and the Gen 3 versions is it's completely ambidextrous, because you've got two slide releases, one on the left and the right hand side, and then the magazine release you can actually flip around and switch. So if you are a left-handed shooter, it's perfect for you. There's a lot more left-handed users out there on the airsoft in the airsoft community now. We're getting a lot more requests for left-handy friendly bits in terms of like bolt actions and stuff. So it's nice to see that these features, if you're a right-handed shooter, you're probably never going to need it, but if you are a left-handed shooter, you can switch it round and make it slightly easier for yourself. The slide, as you can see, it's chamfered on the front here, and what this does aid in, it gives it a bit more to it aesthetically. In my opinion, it gives it a bit more of a sort of a modern look compared to the old Glocks. It's not massive, you've still got the boxy slide of the Glock 17, and holsters as well. You've got slightly smaller, narrower front there, which means when you're putting it in your holster, if you've got Kydex or really tight-fitting holsters, you don't want the pistol to go anywhere, it's nice to use that to sort of guide it into the holster. Makes it a little bit easier. As well as the flared magwell, you've got a new bumper design, the bottom here a lot more sleek looking. And like I say, with the Gen 5 magazines, they actually have this catch on both sides, which enables you to switch the magazine release over. This being the sample that we had ahead of time, it's just a Gen 4 magazine with a different bumper on there. So in terms of trigger pull and reset, it's very similar to the older models. Still nice and snappy. I mean, Glock 17s from WE have been in the industry for a long time now. Myself and many of you out there will have run these pistols over the years, upgraded them, give them a load of depth, perhaps put some CO2 magazines over in the years as well. They do seem to be quite relentless in terms of the way they're used and how they last. I mean, there's probably some of you out there that will have had problems with the W17s now. WE have not been without their issues by any means, but I would imagine that the most common pistol on the field is probably a Glock 17 from WE, just because of how popular these are, especially to the new starters as well. So we're just going to pop the slide off. You just pull down these little tabs on either side, pull them down, the slide comes off the front there. You'll see for the frame, if you're familiar with the older versions, the Gen 3s and the Gen 4s, and I'll keep saying it, you'll see a lot of similarities here. Not really much has changed. All the internal components tend to be the same as the older models, but there was nothing, if it's not broke, don't fix it. The only exception is this cutout for the right hand side slide release. So that's a nice feature. They're going to have to mould that into the frame and put the extra components in. So that's the only differences I can see here. On the slide, everything seems very similar. A few little sort of upgrades here and there. It's nice to see a stopper on this now. So many different manufacturers and brands do things differently with their slide, their return springs and guide rods. And usually the Glock 17s, I mean, it's going back a while when I used a Glock 17, but it was literally just a fitment where it sat in the front there, so it's nice they've put a little notch on there to keep it in place. Hop unit as well and the outer barrel look very much the same as previous models, but this is good because all your aftermarket upgraded hop units, inner barrels, hop rubbers, they're all the same components. So if you've got those parts lying around or you're not sure which parts to get, the ones for the older generations will fit this as well, with the exception of the hop unit just being that if it is an upgraded hop unit and it hasn't got that little notch there, I know Maple Leaf do an upgraded hop unit for the WE17, the older versions. If it hasn't got that there, it might be an easy thing to put on. You might not even need it. The older models didn't need it. It's just a nice feature there. So I imagine Maple Leaf and other companies will be coming out with hop units if there is any differences there. But using VSR bookings, VSR style cut barrels, like gas blowback barrels, so you know your Maple Leaf rubbers and your other bits and pieces will go in just fine. Looking at the rear of the slide, not too many differences. It all looks like the same components, same piston, same nozzle. Again, you know, the amount of these that are on the market for the amount that go wrong, they're a very reliable pistol. Iron sights and bits and pieces are probably going to go on as well with aftermarket bits and pieces. As you can see, you've got the normal style Glock 17 sights on there. Nice and easy to use, nice and easy to see, whether you're in the daytime or the night time, if it's a bit like it's getting sort of dusk in woodland and such. If you're doing a lot of CQB and you're doing dark environments, it's probably worth getting some tritium sights or some just glow in the dark that charge up once they've been in a light environment. So it's good to see that they are making little improvements here and there, because let's face it, at the end of the day they could have just changed the frame and made that different. They didn't have to change the internal components as well, but it looks like they are making some little changes to make these pistols better. So for those thinking that this is just another release by WE that hasn't really changed much, again, they have done some little bits and pieces to it to make it, I hope, perform a little bit better. So you can see that guide rod slots in there and it's not going anywhere. You can't pull it out, it can't drop out, where before with like WE and other brand Glocks, you just put it in there, you probably seat the slide upside down to assemble it just to make sure it doesn't move. And it's back together nice and easy. Trigger pull's nice. It's very predictable of where it's going to be, especially if you've been using these pistols in the past as well. You know, there's not a massive pull on it, and when you get used to using these pistols, it's easy to predict. I mean, it's quite snappy on the trigger pull, and you've got options. You know, Ace 1 arms, guns modify. There's loads of people that do triggers for these setups. You know, if you want salient style triggers, CNC aluminium ones with the red and the gold safeties to really pimp this thing up, you can do. I think this is gassed. It is. Let's just test how snappy it is. Let me just zoom you out a little bit. So nice and snappy. It locks back. So I'll quickly go shove it through the chrono. The green, put green gas in the magazine. It's going to be at room temperature. The magazine isn't cold at all, but I imagine it's going to be somewhere between 300 and 320 FPS. So we'll get that chronoed and then we'll do a quick accuracy shoot and then we'll come back on camera. So as you can see, they're very respectable output in terms of FPS for this thing. Bang on the money for the first few shots, it's about 320, then it does go down the more you fire it, obviously. There's only 10 shots on the chrono and then 10 shots as the accuracy. The hop's not set, I'm using 0.2s, about 10 meters. This literally is a case of pulling it out the box and firing it as it is. I don't set the hops on these, I don't set them up for heavy ammo. There's no trickery involved in trying to get great results out of these. It's literally telling you as I see it. So, .2 BBs, 10 rounds in the magazine, gas the magazine, I've popped it into the gun, wrap the slide, and then literally just point and fire it. There's no sort of staggered firing or firing from a you know, sort of a fixed position where it can keep it nice and steady. Putting the magazine in, racking the slide, pulling it up, and just firing 10 rounds into the target, which you'll see there. So those results would differ for those that are, you know, sort of taking their time with it, or setting the gun up to use .25s or even .3s for higher accuracy. There is a lot more you can get out of these WE Glocks than what the ships from the factory. So you know, nice barrels, nice hot rubbers. You know, you're not going to leave this thing standard over time. You're going to be putting bits and pieces into there. So a nice new release from WE. Nothing that breaks the internet in regards of new releases. It is just a run-of-the-mill Glock with a few upgrades here and there. But if you're looking at the Gen 3 and the Gen 4 Glocks and you want a little bit more feature-wise, like I said, they come blank, they're not traded because they're an unlicensed product. But you can find these and all the others on our website, bespokeairsoft.co.uk. And if you like this, give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe, hit the bell notification if you want to be alerted when we upload new videos. We'll be doing a lot more of these. We've got some more WE pistols to bring your way, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.